Welcome to the Lean Out Your Business podcast, a show dedicated to helping entrepreneurs accelerate business growth and simplify success. I'm your host, Krista Grasso, and I've been working with businesses for more than 2 decades to help them lean out and optimize what's working while eliminating anything that's not adding value. So if you are ready to get more time back in your day, more profit in your business, and to do business differently, growing and scaling on your terms, let's dive into today's episode. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Lean Out Your Business podcast. Today we have something a little bit fun going on. It's going to be the Krista and Annie show. So we have a new format for some of our episodes coming up where I am bringing on my absolutely amazing rock star team to get to have some conversations about some really interesting topics about scaling your business, about simplifying, about the things that we all face as entrepreneurs who are trying to scale a business through the messy middle of all the things. And so today, Miss Annie P. Ruggles is on the show with me. You probably remember Annie from episode 100, as well as my first ever podcast guest. And she is so incredibly brilliant at marketing that I somehow convinced her to come on and join my team as my fractional CMO, even though I'm pretty sure I'm the only person that she does fractional CMO services for. But today we're going to have a conversation about the importance of having a really strong right-hand person in your business when you want to get yourself out of the day-to-day and to feel like you actually have some freedom and some flexibility, and for not every single thing and every single decision to be dependent on you. And we're going to talk a little bit about a lot of the gaps and a lot of the things that people do wrong in their structure when they're looking for and trying to find this right-hand person. This is something that I am super passionate about, and Annie and I have so many conversations about. And we were chatting the other day, and she said, this would make a great podcast episode. So here we are. Annie, welcome to the show as a discussion partner instead of an interview guest for a change.
Wow, moving on up. Yeah, I did say that, and it is going to be a great discussion because, having been on both sides of it, we both have. We've both been the right hand of a founder, and we've both been the founder. And in most points of our business, we're wearing both of those hats, right? You are also a fractional CMO, and I am your fractional CMO. And then I'm running a company, right? So we're kind of always living in this sandwich of being both roles that I think has made it really clear to us what works in these situations and how to empower each other in these situations and how to determine who's doing what at which time in these situations, which seems to be like the biggest kerfuffle imaginable in most cases.
It's true. And if you think in general, right, let's assume all of you listening, like us, are visionaries. As natural visionaries, we live in a place of possibility. We live in a place of ideation and innovation. And our ops people, the person who we typically bring in as our right-hand person, is the person who lives in a world of planning and constraints and measurements and consistency. And so we both bring really different things to the table. And it's great because you need that counterbalance. It's why it's important that you have this person. But without really understanding what you need in the role, without really understanding how to structure that relationship, and without bringing somebody in who actually knows and gets the entrepreneurial dynamic, which is dramatically different than somebody who did ops in corporate, then you're really setting yourself up for a whole lot of conflict and frustration on both parts because you're frustrated that they can't see the vision that you have and they can't see the big ideas that you have and why they're trying to tell you to slow down or not do things that you want to do. And on the flip side, right, it's just this constant tension between the two. And that's a really great thing in some respects. And it can be a really big drag in other respects. So we're going to talk a little bit about that dynamic and the person that you really want as your right hand in your business that I don't see enough businesses bring in.
Ooh. Ah, just like dangle that little
Did I just do
carrot.
like a big dramatic reveal?
Ooh, I know. It's like, ooh, cliffhanger in next week's. No, we're going to talk about that today. But no, I think that's totally true because even just in finding that person, I myself have had two different tendencies, and I've also seen my clients have kind of these two polarizing things of either I want to hire me fresh out of college, or I want to hire the exact opposite of my brain. And I don't see a whole lot of people looking at why. That's just what they look for when they hire. They're like, "Oh, I'll know," because they'll either feel like college me, or they'll feel like I don't even understand how their brain works. And it's like, well, okay, but sure, sure. However, college you is going to annoy you like you because they're going to pull all the stunts that college you would have pulled. Right. And especially they have the same skill set or same budding skill set, maybe back when you were an implementer. So maybe you're a little bit too strategic right out of the gate. Or if you're a visionary and you're like, I just want a pure implementer, your pure implementer might piss you off. Your pure implementer might be so dedicated to streamlining and making art out of a process that you've established and doing things just so that it makes you bonkers. That's why we got to be careful about looking to hire in extremes. Instead, we want to find our natural complement. We want to find the person we can rely on at the right level of strategy and the right level of autonomy and the right level of implementation. And Krista, what I learned from you, and I would love to hear you speak to, is this idea of inspired ownership. Like what? Because we're not really looking at delegation anymore. What the heck is delegation doing wrong? And what the heck is inspired ownership?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And this will be its entire separate podcast episode because I can talk about this for days and days and days on end. But I do want to touch on it and then dive into this role that I call the soul in your business. Soul, SOL, strategy and operations leader. And we're going to talk a little bit about what that looks like and how you might just have that person already sitting on your team, just waiting for a little bit of development. But I do want to touch on this concept of inspired ownership over delegation. So often, what we're taught is that we need to learn how to delegate. We need to be great delegators. And if we're not great delegators, sometimes we hire somebody else that we hope will do all of the delegation for us. And so they're out there delegating. Yes, delegating is important in a respect, right? You do need to be able to clearly communicate to somebody what's expected and have them go off and actually get that done. However, what I don't like about delegation as a principle is it's very hierarchical. It's very, the more senior, more knowledgeable, more something person, am going to tell you, the less senior or less knowledgeable person, what you need to do. And it is very top down and it requires a lot of management. You're not really getting something off your plate. You're just having someone go off and do a little bit of work and then come and check back in with you. And
Yeah.
then you got to check it and see how it's going. And so it's not really a great way to work in your business. Do you need to know how to delegate? Absolutely. Does it have a role? Yeah, for sure. But on the flip side, what you want a really high performing team, and a high performing team is not a whole bunch of people who get delegated to. A high performing team is a team who takes what I call inspired ownership. It's a team that naturally comes together and collectively and collaboratively takes on ownership of the results and the outcomes that you're trying to get in the business. And they come together and they figure stuff out together. They are a team. And they not only take inspired ownership over their own results and the quality of their work and their own role in delivering on the vision that you have for your business, but they also take that on in the place of working with the others and engaging the others that are needed in order to get those results and achieve those outcomes. It's very different than delegation, where somebody's like, what did they tell me I needed to do? I need to do this. I'm going to check it off my list. And as soon as my list list is complete, I'm done until somebody delegates and tell me the next thing to do. It's a very siloed, very isolated, I'm just going to cross a bunch of stuff off and do what I'm told kind of way of working, as opposed to a here's the vision, here's the goals, here's the things that we all committed to, here's the timeline and the roadmap that we committed to. How am I going to show up and get this done? How am
Mhm.
I going to engage and work with other people and get this done? And to me, that's inspired ownership. That is a very different conversation, and that is a very different business than the business that most people build. Most people build a whole lot of businesses based on hierarchy and delegation. And it really does not take you out of the middle. It just has somebody else do the busy work, but you still have to tell them what to do. You still have to check what to do, or you hire somebody else to do that for you, but somebody's still doing that role, even if it's not you. And it's just simply a role that's not needed. And you're going to get far better results with inspired ownership than you're ever going to get out of delegation. So I will pause there and turn it over to you, Annie.
Well, I just think of like, hear me out, y'all. My sister-in-law is addicted to her cats, and Krista and I love our pets. I'm not saying we don't, but Krista knows when Krista travels that either her loving husband or her loving, fabulous life manager or someone will be taking care of the dog, right? I also know my neighbor, whoever is watching the dog, my sister-in-law cannot handle this. My sister-in-law hires a cat sitter, but then goes on vacation and watches the cat camera the entire time. So she's missing her vacation because even though she has a cat sitter, she is watching the cat camera and sort of critiquing the cat sitter for no reason. That is what overmanagement through delegation feels like. We have to check that it gets done. We have to check that it's happening to our exact standard. We have to check because we're kind of afraid that maybe the person you're paying isn't actually doing the job or not doing it how you want it. Or if I look away for 5 seconds, it's not getting done. We all need to stop watching the cat cameras so we can vision. Right? Like she can't have a salad without 75 cat camera breaks. You can't run a business and have profound, life moving, disruptive vision if every 4 seconds you got to go check on your team or make sure this member of your team is liaising properly with this member of your team or having to double check or fact check that stuff got done. That doesn't work, right? But the reason why this can happen, and that key piece that Krista dangled so beautifully, is you have to have the person known as the soul in place. You cannot foster inspired ownership in just anybody. And you would have a heart attack if you tried to delegate inspired ownership to a pure implementer. So, Krista, what the heck is a soul and why are they cut out for this?
Yeah, absolutely. So a soul is, as I said, a strategy and operations leader, and it blends strategy and operations. And if you're thinking, I'm the visionary, I've got the strategy, or yeah, but my operations person doesn't need to be strategic, they're in charge of implementation. That is where there is a big gap in a lot of different businesses. Because here's why I think a soul is so important and why I think a soul is what you want as your right hand person in the business. You need somebody else who can see the big, bold vision that you have and who could see how all of the different pieces of the puzzle fit together to actually implement and realize that vision. You need the person who understands strategically all 9 of the engines that it takes to sustainably scale a business. You need that person who's looking holistically so you're not the only one who is across all facets of your business and understands what needs to happen, how it needs to happen, who needs to do it, and why. Now, this person is not doing all of the things themselves, right? A mistake that I see sometimes is a founder who has grown up doing everything themselves, then hires another person and delegates to them all of the things, right? And so it's not that we're trying to say, bring on this person and they are going to be an expert in all facets of your business, from marketing to sales to operations to planning to everything. That in and of itself is obviously not very realistic. There are a few of us unicorns out there. I am a weird one, I know. I literally am an expert on all of those facets, and I'm a CMO in some businesses, a COO in other businesses, and what I call a CISO, a Chief Strategy and Operating Officer, is really what I call
She's a
myself.
freak, folks. She's a freak.
I get that there are not a whole lot of unicorns out there who really are kind of equally skilled on the creative side of things as well as the very structured and organized side of things. But you do want your right hand person to be the person who fully understands it. You want your right hand person, which is frequently an operations person, and you want them to be able to think like you. You want them to be able to think like a founder. You want them to be able to be strategic, and you want them to be able to implement on your vision as if it was their own vision, as if it was their own company. You want that person who has that line of sight and that inspired ownership over your business as if it was their own. And the problem with a lot of people who are in ops roles is that they've never been given the opportunity to actually think strategically. People in ops are not taught how to think. They are not taught how to think like a strategist. They are not taught how to think like a founder. And if they came from corporate, they most certainly are never taught how to handle the dynamic, very fast paced world of entrepreneurship, where ideas are flying at them at all different points and times, and things change so quickly that by the time they built out their perfect little plan and created their system, it's entirely different. It's a really hard transition in world sometimes for somebody who grew up in traditional ops to be really successful as the right hand of a founder in a small scaling business. It just takes a different way of thinking. But here's the thing, a lot of people who are very ops minded actually have this capability. They've just never had the opportunity to actually unearth it or to explore that side of their skill set. And because they don't have to be the one doing, they're not going to be the one necessarily writing your social media posts or creating your content marketing or doing a lot of those things, but they need to understand what needs to be done and how it all fits together. A lot of them thrive being put in that role. They love being put in that role and getting to actually think strategically, and it helps them have a completely different appreciation for your operations. And I will tell you right now, when you have someone who truly understands your business and who thinks like you, your operations will automatically lean out and become more efficient, because there is ironically a lot of waste in operations when people don't understand and think like a founder. So you would think that it wouldn't work that way, but it actually does lean things out and simplify things in your operations when people understand and see how it all fits together. And it's a huge gap that I see with most traditionally trained operations people. Very capable in most cases, but not always given the opportunity that they need to really shine and step into that role. And on the flip side, sometimes you have a more creative minded person who makes an exceptional strategy and operations leader, because again, maybe they're not the ones rolling up their sleeves and creating your processes or documenting your systems. But if they can understand operations and really understand it well, while leaning on their strength of strategy and creativity, that just gives you such an incredible rock star. And I will tell you, this makes the biggest difference in your business, in your autonomy, in your ability to truly feel like you have somebody that you can trust to run things, to implement things, and to bring your vision to life without you having to check in all the time and watch the cat video.
Yep. And we've been using the word strategy and the different ways that strategy shows up in different types of people. So maybe what is strategy to them is streamlining or making things more efficient. Maybe it's brainstorming. Maybe it's restructuring or repurposing, right? There's a next level of this could be done differently or better that gets trained out a lot of our implementers and our ops people, right? But if they're coming to you with ideas for improvement if they're coming to you with ideas for efficiency or enhancement, if they're saying, hey, I think we could solve our clients better, any of that might be something you're hearing that's a sign that someone has real strategic potential there.
Yeah, it's again, some people are truly just very operationally minded. They're your number crunchers. They're very systematic in things that they do. And it's just they're not wired that way. And that's great. They play a very valuable role on your team. But I find that in a small business in particular, where you're not hiring out this big, huge C suite of all of the players, it's important that the person that you choose to be your right hand person can bridge that gap between strategy and operations and be a true strategy and operations leader, as opposed to just trying to hire somebody with an ops background who is kind of your opposite to balance things out. It ends up not working super well. You both end up really frustrated with one another, and you don't make the momentum in the way that you really want to in your business.
Because we all wear too many hats to have anybody be too rigid in one, right? Everybody's got to pick up the phone sometimes, is what we used to say in like small town theater. It's like the stage manager has to be able to communicate just as much as the lead actor, just as much as the producer, just as much as the director, just as much as the box office assistant. We all got to answer the phone sometimes, right? So we're talking about people that need to be able to solve problems in real time, to put out fires in real time. We don't do that without getting our hands dirty. Some people are not trained for that, but have natural skill. Some people are not trained for that and never will be. But at the end of the day, you want the person you can roll up your sleeves with.
Absolutely. And here's what tends to happen when you don't have that. Sometimes you have a duo. You've got the founder and their right hand person, what we call your soul. Sometimes you have a trio. You have the founder, you have the ops person, and you have the marketing person. And trios can work, absolutely can. But the problem with that in general, if it's just you and an ops person, or if it's you and a marketing person and an ops person, is you're still the only person, the one and only person who's looking holistically across your entire business and how all of the different pieces interconnect, and who fully understands how things are coming together and how they need to come together in order to achieve your vision. Sometimes you don't even fully understand it, but there certainly is not anybody else with that lens. People have the lens of what their focus is. They're focused on the operations side of things or the marketing side of things. You're the only person who has that lens across the whole business. Mm-hmm. And as long as that is true, you can never truly remove yourself from the day to day. You simply can't, because otherwise there's a gap. And that's why I think the soul role is so incredibly important, because you want a trusted right-hand person who thinks like you and acts like you, not acts like you in how they show up, because they're probably wired very different, but acts like you in the sense of acting as if the business was their own, understanding that this action or this inaction in this one particular area is going to have this impact and this effect in another part of the business and on the overall goals and revenue targets that you have in the business. And that's where I think this role is so incredibly important. And again, it's not something that's really taught. It's not something that's really developed. And that's why it's what we do and what we train people for. This is what we do inside Simplify to Scale.
Period. I mean, it is. It totally is. We look at who you have. We look at how to maximize their strengths, and we look at how to get you out of the delegation trap and surrounded by people with whom you can foster inspired ownership. This is exactly what we do, because it's critical, because it's necessary. Again, you can't vision if you're checking the cat cam every 5 seconds. Or to use a very real example, we are a tripod company for the most part. You have 2 right hands and a left hand. Chris has got 3 hands. What? But, if you had to constantly babysit not only me or not only Jordan, but the connection between me and Jordan. If every time team ops and team marketing needed to have a chat, we had to book a meeting with Krista, what does that do? That overburdens Krista, right? So we empower teams to empower their people to support the founder in the vision, but that has to include everybody being autonomous and taking that ownership. Otherwise, we're just playing delegation ping pong and blowing up each other's Mondays. Okay, now this task goes over here, and then now the task goes back to you. And it's like, no, just get it done. Finish it.
Completely. And Annie said something that's really important, and that is, I have two souls. Soul it's a role, right? It's strategy and operations leader. So multiple people can wear the soul hat, and you do want your CMO, your COO, like I have, both of them being strategy and operations leaders, right? Your marketing people learn to think through the lens of ops, and they learn to truly understand the impact that marketing is going to have on the operational efficiency and sustainability of the business. Your operations person thinks like a marketer. They understand the strategic decisions and how different campaigns and things are going to influence the growth and the revenue in the results that they're measuring and tracking. And so it's important that your person, your people, the leaders in your company understand how to be strategy and operations leaders, right? Whether you call them a soul or whether you call them a marketing manager or an ops manager or a COO or a CMO, whatever you call that role in your business, they need to be a soul.
Yes, because they are the glue. In order for this to run efficiently, they are the glue.
They are. And so we could talk about this literally for days, because we do talk about this literally for days.
For days, but every day.
But we are going to round out this episode simply for the spirit of time here, and we will be back again. So let me know. I want to hear. Send me an email, info@leanoutmethod.com. Do you like this format? Do you like getting to know my team? They're amazing. You know Jordan Eads as well. If you are a regular listener of the show, she is the other part of our tripod here, and she'll be on with me for some of these discussions in the future as well. But I certainly enjoyed this episode. I hope you did. And if you want to learn more about how to take your right-hand person and develop them as a soul, we have our next round of Simplify to Scale kicking off really soon. We've got some really incredible and amazing things included in our upcoming cohort that I would love to chat with you about, see if it's a good fit. So you can put time on my calendar at leanoutmethod.com/consult anytime, and let's talk and see if your person is ready to be a soul. Annie, thank you so much for being here. Any final words before we round out this episode?
Y'all, it's time to turn off the damn cat cam.
Words of wisdom from Annie P. Ruckles. All right. Thank you so much. Hope you loved this episode. I'll be back with you again next week. Thank you for joining me for another episode of the Lean Out Your Business podcast. I hope you got a lot of value and actionable insights from today's show, and would love if you take a moment to leave us a review. If you have any questions on today's episode or on how to lean out your business, join us over in our private Facebook community, where every week we do live training and Q&A, and I'd love to have you be part of the conversation. Head to leanoutmethod.com/group to join us. And before you go, be sure to subscribe to the show so you're the first to know when we release a new episode. We'll see you next week.